Excerpts from behind the scenes. Considerations for planning and preparing an investigative interview. Presenting legal obligations, your rights and warnings using the R.E.A.D mnemonic device. Bruce Pitt-Payne, April 17, 2022. I'm not a physician, but I know I could get ill if I didn't take care of myself. I'm not an actor, but I know I could say the wrong lines if I didn't rehearse enough. I'm not a physicist, but I do know I'd hit the ground if I fell off a ladder. And I'm not a lawyer, but I know I'd make one happy during cross-examination if I didn't fully embrace the legal obligations accorded her client. This is why I'm not the least bit reticent to express my thoughts and feelings on the art of giving legal obligations. And you'll see there is more to it than simply reading from a card. The goal of this talk is to save you from having to be schooled on the stand. Now, don't get me wrong. I appreciate all the lessons learned from some brilliant defense lawyers. I just wish it had taken place in a classroom setting. A few words on comprehension. Before we dive too deep, it's important to mention the work of a fellow named Eastwood, who has conducted research into the comprehension and understandability of legal warnings. Now, those who are in my age group may think I'm speaking of the notorious Inspector Dirty Harry Callahan, or at least Clint Eastwood, the actor who portrayed him. I am, however, referring to the infamous Dr. Joseph Eastwood, a Canadian scholar who now hangs his hat at the University of Ontario Institute of Technology. I recommend you read his research papers to get the full value. However, for the purpose of this talk, the following excerpt is important. As mentioned, research from around the world has demonstrated that people rarely understand their legal rights fully as delivered through police cautions. Although this lack of comprehension is more prominent in vulnerable individuals, such as juveniles and those with cognitive deficits, it also held for relatively high-functioning people, such as students and police officers. If you tell a person something and it was not understood, regardless of the reason, you might as well have not passed on that information. Consequently, if the content had not been understood, it would be hard for the receiver to have been able to make an informed decision based on that information. When it comes to legal warnings and obligations, this diminution of comprehension could lead to an otherwise acceptable statement being ruled inadmissible. It could also lead to either an involuntary or false confession, both of which could have diminished reliability. For these reasons, it's incumbent upon the interviewer to ensure that the warnings were given using language appropriate to the individual. If the interviewee speaks a different language, consider using an interpreter. If he has a hearing problem, speak loudly, present them in writing, or use sign language. If he has intellectual limitations or could be considered vulnerable in any way, adjust your language and do more than just read the information from a card. Additionally, audio record these conversations to help you later show you were diligent and disciplined in your obligations, or enjoy your time attempting in vain to convince a judge that you conveyed the warnings adequately. Recording would also allow you to give the warning once and have the confidence to not feel obliged to go over it again. If the arrested person had indicated clearly that he had fully understood what he had been informed of, and it had been audio recorded, in many instances, it would be redundant to give the same information again. Embracing the Charter. What does it mean to truly embrace the Charter of Rights and Freedoms? Is it doing the bare minimum so that a box could be checked off? Let's take a short quiz to help explain the concept. When you tell a suspect that he has the right to call any lawyer he chooses, do you secretly hope he calls a bad one? After he has received legal advice, do you pray that he soon forgets it? Deep down, do you hope he didn't understand his rights or the advice provided by his lawyer? If you answered yes to any of the above questions, you have not truly embraced the Charter of Rights and Freedoms or any other legal principles to which you should adhere. When you embrace a legal obligation, you fully accept its raison d'etre without doubting the purpose or necessity. You would aim to err on the side of overkill as opposed to not doing enough. You would hope that the suspect chose to seek advice from the best lawyer possible and that the advice given was fully understood. You would not fear any legal advice as it would be part of the process and play to a spirit of equality and fairness. You would not feel slighted if a suspect chose to remain silent, as you would understand that to be his constitutional right. You would know that you could be persistent in attempts to persuade him to choose to talk while feeling comfortable within a bubble of reasonableness. You would rest easy dealing with dependent variables such as context and circumstance and not be afraid to pose the question, would it hurt to do it? You would accept the worst case scenario that no information were received and the best case scenario that a judge would see you as a charter god. Giving the legal obligations. The act of reading a warning from a card does not guarantee that the listener had understood it. Never assume that other people have the same level of comprehension as you until they have proven it. Guided by the ABCs of investigation, assume nothing, believe nobody, and check everything, I've developed the mnemonic R.E.A.D, which stands for read, explain, assess, discuss. R, read from the card. E, explain all components using language appropriate to the listener. A, assess understanding by asking him to repeat it in his own words. And D, discuss everything and pose questions until you are sure he has unequivocally understood it. If it is clear that the person had understood, it would be acceptable to skip some steps. For example, if the assess stage showed full comprehension, skip the discuss part. Use it as a tool to launch meaningful discussion, not as a protocol that ignores context and circumstance. Go over each individual concept within a warning, line by line if necessary, and don't move to the next point or concept until having first considered all stages of the read process. Using a transcript, let's take a look at how this could unfold. We'll start with an example of a Section 10A CCRF obligation, the reason for arrest or detention. Police, read. John, you've been arrested for theft under $5,000, which is a Criminal Code of Canada offense. Explain. That means that the reason you can't leave right now is there is enough evidence for me to believe you took an item from a person named Jenny Craig without her permission, and that the item is worth less than $5,000. Do you understand? John. Uh-huh. Police. Sorry, I'm not sure what uh-huh meant. John. Yes, I do. Police. Assess. Just so I know you do fully understand, please tell me what I just told you in your own words. John. I can't go anywhere because I'm under arrest for stealing something, and it didn't cost more than $5,000. Police. Exactly. Now, let's do this with the informational component of Section 10B of the CCRF, the rights to counsel. Police. Now, John, I'm going to read something to you that is extremely important, and I'll then talk to you about it to make sure you understood all of it, okay? John. Yep. Yes. Police. Read. I am Sergeant Bruce Pitt-Payne of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. You have the right to retain and instruct counsel in private without delay. You may call any lawyer you want. There is a 24-hour telephone service available which provides a legal aid duty lawyer who can give you legal advice in private. This advice is given without charge, and the lawyer can explain the legal aid plan to you. If you wish to contact a legal aid duty lawyer, I can provide you with a telephone number. Now, before I ask you if you want to call a lawyer, I'd like to go over what I just read. Let's go through it in bite-sized chunks. Explain. The first part of what I read was, you have the right to retain and instruct counsel in private without delay. You may call any lawyer you want. That means that because you are not free to go, You have the right to call any lawyer you want to get legal advice in private, and that I will do whatever I can reasonably do to make sure it happens. Assess. What does that mean to you? John. That I can call any lawyer I want to get legal advice and my call will be in private. Police. Exactly. Do you have any questions about this part before we go on? John. Nope, I get that part. Police. Okay, let's move on. Read. The next part was, there is a 24-hour telephone service available which provides a legal aid duty lawyer who can give you legal advice in private. This advice is given without charge, and the lawyer can explain the legal aid plan to you. If you wish to contact a legal aid duty lawyer, I can provide you with a telephone number. Explain. Let me explain this using normal language. At any time of the day or night, there are free lawyers you can call to get legal advice from. It's totally your choice whether you want to use them, and nobody will question you on it. We call them legal aid duty lawyers, and they do not work for the police. If you talk to them, like with any other lawyer, your conversation is private. If you have any questions about the legal aid plan, how these free lawyers work, they'll be able to answer them. If you wish to speak with them, I have a telephone number for them that you can have, and I'll do whatever I can to get you speaking with them right away. Assess. John, I want to make sure you understood what I just explained, so please repeat it back to me using your own words. John. Well, if I want to speak with these legal aid lawyers, you have a number to call them on. And it's private, just like with the other lawyers. Discuss. Police. Thanks, John. So I think you understand most of it, but I want to make sure. So I'm going to ask you some questions. If you want to call them for advice, how much would it cost you? John. It's free. Police. Exactly. And who would be able to listen to your call? John. Nobody but me and the lawyer. It's a private call. Police. Absolutely correct. Do you have any questions about your right to call a lawyer, John? John. Nope. No. Police. Okay, do you want to call a lawyer of your choice, or do you want to call one of the free ones? John. I'll call one of the free ones. Police. Okay. Have a seat right over there, John, and here's how it will work. I'm going to call this number and leave a message, and they will call back soon. When they do, I'll take you over to that private room over there and close the door so you can have a private conversation with the free lawyer. Is that okay? John. Yes, thanks. Police. Do you have any questions? John. Nope. This process would also work well with other legal obligations such as the police warning, the secondary warning, or even the supplemental warning, otherwise known as the Prosper warning. Conclusion. Few things in life are easy if they're worthwhile. And this applies to providing legal warnings and obligations. As police officers, we often breeze through them, hoping an ephemeral attempt would satisfy our legal obligations while not driving a suspect to choose not to speak to us. This mindset would be the antithesis to our goal of embracing the principles behind the warning. You cannot serve two masters. You either embrace the concept fully, or you're playing as an amateur in a professional arena. Learn the legislation and underlying principles regarding the warning or obligation, and come up with a way of providing it without having to read it from a card like a neophyte. Whereas reading a warning in a robotic fashion upon initial arrest may be sufficient, it would rarely be conducive to rapport building during the interview proper. True specialists and experts usually know the principles behind their craft so well that they could express them easily to anyone. Be that kind of police officer when it comes to your legal obligations. Thank you, Dr. Joseph Eastwood, for providing the research to support much of what many